one of the most enjoyable groups I've spent time with in my life was about 50 pastors that we call the Barnabas Group. Met for a number of years. It was declared to be a safe place for pastors to come, to fellowship, to share, to learn, express each other's hearts. And it was a pretty special group. You know, you meet with the same guys over and over for quite a while, and you develop some special relationships. It's nice to have a group of peers that you can stop trying to be better than, you know. Just admit we're all in the same boat. We're trying to minister and survive and handle issues and just encourage each other and comfort each other. It was a really special group. I enjoyed that Barnabas group deeply. And when I think about it, it reminds me of a passage of Scripture in Philippians chapter 2. I wish you'd take your Bibles and turn with me there. It's back in the New Testament, in which Paul's describing what it's like to live in a group. There's harmony, there's oneness, there's fellowship, there's encouragement, there's comfort, there's blessing. The kind of place we'd all like to live. The kind of place we'd all like to be. Kind of a heaven on earth, if you will. Now I'm going to read this, first 4 verses, and I'm going to underline it on the screen. You see it there, but I'm going to emphasize with my voice and just sit back here and just marvel at all the, quote, cool stuff, end quote, all the cool stuff that God has laid out for those of us who followed Him. It's beautiful. I'll emphasize again. If you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from His love, if any fellowship with the Spirit, if any tenderness, compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and purpose. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility consider others better than yourselves. Each of you should not look only to his own interests, but also to the interests of others. Now, every other word is a different dynamic of the kind of place you and I'd like to be. Now, some of us have found some families like that. We've enjoyed a family like that. Some of us have a Bible study like that, or maybe even some folks at work that we've enjoyed that's quite like that. But the problem is, I think you'd agree with me, and as wonderful as all this is, we want it to keep on going forever. It doesn't. Because there's a couple of things that destroy that. And it's a shame. It's just a shame. Because this is what He's designed for us to enjoy. It's just a shame. The problem is found in the same passage. I'll read there in verse number 3. I'll put these in capital letters on the screen. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Now, those two things are like debilitating weight that just pull down and destroy all those other really good things. It's okay then, because we're longing to walk in the kingdom, and this passage is about walking in the kingdom, and enjoying life and enjoying Christianity and enjoying each other and having great fellowship. It might be good then to look at the problem that some of us deal with. The problem is that God created us to glorify Himself and to enjoy each other and Himself. That was the garden. We're here to glorify God. But you know that since the fall, every one of us struggle with this kind of this internal desire to glorify ourselves. We want to be the most important. We want to be the top dog. We want to be the ruler of our own little universe. We want to be the master of our own little kingdom. Selfish ambition. Let's explore that just for a little bit. You ever heard a little ditty? I live for myself alone, for myself and none beside, just as if I'd never lived and as if I'd never died. That's sad. But now that's the statement of somebody who's decided selfish ambition, strive ahead, control things, to literally what you and I might call become our own Messiah. Now, Jeff, Leon, and Clyde all thought they were Messiah. Dr. Michael Rorak wrote a book about these three guys. In Ypsilanti, Michigan. He called it The Three Messiahs of Ypsilanti. And he spent 5 years trying to take these three men, all diagnosed with a psychotic delusional disorder, all of whom totally delusionalized, thinking they were Messiah. He tried to bring these guys through counseling to understand that they weren't and get them back to being normal. He had no success. Now we know there's all kinds of chemical reasons why he would have none success, but didn't know that then. And he details in his book, it's fascinating, how he decided for the next 3 years, after the first two hadn't fixed it, to put them together in the same classes, in the same craft groups, in the same room to sleep at night. They ate at the same lunch hours. They were all three in the same group settings. And he describes in the book how he's trying to help each of these Christs realize that there's other Christs in the room. So, they couldn't be the only Christ. And what makes the books interesting is some of the dialogue that takes place in some of their therapy sessions. Joe shows up, dressed in a funny hat, funny shoes, ugly checkered shirt. Comes into the group wearing those clothes, says, God's told me I'm the Messiah. I've got a message to deliver. I've got a world to save. Dr. Rorak says to him, well, Clyde, you sure are dressed funny. Sure got big plans. Who told you that? Clyde said, God told me that. Joe said, I did not. It's funny to read the book, but not so different from the experience of many of us. See, when you try to become the Messiah of your own little world, you start acting like one of the Three Stooges before long. In fact, you end up a whole lot like one of the Three Stooges. Big example, but we'll bring it down to the simple. Tiger Woods, poor guy. Your heart aches for him, even though you're disappointed in him. I mean, everybody knows the story, the great fall. Can you imagine laying in the street, semi-conscious, blood dripping out of your mouth when the EMT guys show up, your wife standing there with a golf club over your head? I mean, come on. What happened here? Well, you know what happened. He was master and controller of his own little world. He tried to put his hands around it, and he made it his world. And everything in his world was related back to him. And when you become the Messiah of your own world, it's not long until, one way or other, it will come crashing down around your ears. Now, most of us will never have 10 mistresses, never have a $1 billion empire to lose. But the point is really simple. What we're seeing here in macrocosm, in the heart of a human being, is exactly what goes on in all of our own hearts, because within each of us beats the same kind of heart as Tiger Woods. Isn't that true? It's a fallen heart. Our natural tendency is to rule, control. Some of us are such messiahs, we think we could control somebody else's world too. And now we're trying to be messiahs of more than one world. It's tough to play Superman. I remember when I was a boy, wanted to be like Superman. Leap tall buildings in a single bound, bend steel in my bare hands, stand for truth, justice, the American way. I mean, I could do all those things. That's what I wanted to be. But Clark Kent, he fooled the people thinking that he was vulnerable, when in fact he really wasn't vulnerable at all. It was just a facade to hide underneath this strong, powerful man of steel. He's a remarkable Superman, wasn't he? He never needed to join a 12-step recovery group, but he lost his planet, his mom and dad. Most folks need a lot of counseling for that, but he didn't. He never went on eHarmony, although he was one of the most isolated individuals who ever lived. He'd get along by himself. Never went for therapy. But the guy's wearing blue tights and his red underwear on the outside of his tights. I mean, come on. And a cape under his clothes. This guy needs some therapy. But no, he was never confused, never problematic. He handled everything. He was Superman. I wanted to be like Superman. You know, when I was 10 years old, I wanted x-ray vision so I could see through the girls' clothes. I mean, you know, I was 10 years old. It's what you do with x-ray vision, you know. Now you got to go to the airport, the screener there. You can get that today, I guess, you know. I wanted to bend steel in my bare hands, but most of all, you know what I wanted? I wanted his chest, you know. There's not too many Superman chests out there, and I wanted one. I wanted that big red S, you know. I didn't have one of those. I had this kind of, well, sometimes I thought of putting a little B down here for belly, you know, maybe, or a little twisted, tepid eye down here, you know. That would have worked. But the problem is, you're not Superman. I'm not Superman either. I can't be the Superman of my little world. I don't want to be. It's really exhausting to try to be the Messiah and take care of yourself and control your life and those around you. I don't want to be Superman. Fortunately, there's a way out of that. So selfish ambition means I'm going to run things selfishly. Everything centers around me. I'll be my own little Messiah. The other thing that destroys that beautiful, beautiful walking in the kingdom that God has for us is what Paul calls vain conceit. Or you and I could call it empty glory. You can rearrange those words in all kinds of ways. Vain glory, empty conceit. Empty means, well, vain like a mist. It's just that, you know what this is? You know what empty conceit is? You and I might call it enjoying the praise of others. It's worthless. But how many of us live and die to impress the people around us? And we will spend an inordinate amount of time trying to impress them. Why? Because down inside, my little Messiah heart says, not only do I want to be Messiah, I want to be better Messiah than anybody else. I want to be the greatest. Now that beat in Tiger's heart, that beats in your heart, beat in the heart of the disciples. It's a shame to have to live with that. It's no fun. Destroys the kingdom. It's a shame, I guess, that you and I have to even have a heart like that. Once heard a guy say, well, people call me outgoing, but I finally realized I wasn't outgoing. It was just me shining through all the time. Sure enough, you get a group of guys together long enough, they're going to start arguing over who's the best. They're going to start playing for empty glory, being praised by the other folks. It has no meaning, but they live and die for it. So he takes his disciples, and after about 2 years, he's watching them grow and develop. And along the way, they're starting to argue about who's the greatest. And even to the last moment of his time on earth, they're still arguing about it. So deep is this entrenched desire to Messiah my world. Mark chapter 9, just one example. We could read several of these. Mark chapter 9, verse 30. Jesus is out walking with the disciples one day. And we read, they left that place, went through Galilee. Jesus didn't want them to know who he was because he's teaching his disciples some stuff. And he said to them, now watch what he says, the Son of Man is going to be betrayed into the hands of men, and they'll kill him. After 3 days he'll rise. They didn't understand. They were afraid to talk about it. Now wait a minute. If somebody just says to you, I'm going to die, does that get your attention? Well, tough, because I'm greater than you are. Is there something about that doesn't look right? I'm getting my hair fixed yesterday, haircut. And a lady down the way there, we got chatting, just had a handball-sized tumor taken out of the back of her head. Well, you know what? I took a few minutes to talk to her, tried to comfort her, rejoiced with her, because that's what you do when somebody's been hurting. You listen to them, and Jesus says, I'm going to hurt. But see, when you're so concerned about your own little kingdom, you don't even notice the people around you who are hurting. You become so self-absorbed. Guys, I'm going to go die. And isn't it interesting? We go down to verse or two, and 33, they went to Capernaum. In the house, he asked them, what were you guys arguing about there back on the road? They got real quiet. Shh. Because they were trying to figure out who was the greatest. That's sad. That's sad. You know, I wonder how many folks around us need help, need our blessing, need our care, stand right in front of us with their pain, their trouble, and their agony and their despair, and we don't even notice it because we're so concerned and self-absorbed in our own little maniacal Messiah world that all we care about is us and who's the greatest. Sitting down, Jesus called the 12 and said, if anyone wants to be first, he must be the last and the very servant of all. Now, he's not giving us a rule book on how to be first in heaven. He's just telling us how it works. When you develop a servant's heart, you stop trying to be the greatest. Well, all sorts of good things happen. Now, I have in my office a little card. I've had it there for a lot of years. It's my little checklist about empty glory. Because I'm like you. I want to be the greatest. My heart calls for that. My heart wants to have people impressed with me. But you know, that's a dead-end street. And so I'm going to read you my little checklist. It's just kind of a little list of things I think about, which I consider what I call the symptoms of empty glory. A secret fondness to be noticed. I nurse that in my heart sometimes. Do you? Sure. A love of supremacy. A drawing attention to myself in conversation. It's enjoying being flattered. It's a swelling out of myself when I'm finally free to speak or to pray. It's either secretly or publicly complimenting myself instead of giving glory to Christ. It's valuing my ideas and opinions above those of others around me. It's loving to have my name at the top of the list. It's when the pride or the praise of men is sweet to my taste. I don't want those things. That's vainglory. I don't want those. Who wants to play Superman? Who wants to have to be Messiah? That's an awful job. Why would I want to do that? So now there's the problem, see? We want to enjoy the walking in the kingdom with all that cool stuff, but selfish ambition, I can handle it all my way, thank you. It all revolves around me. And vainglory, I live for your praise because I think I'm the greatest. They destroy all this good stuff. That's the problem. So what's the prescription? Well, it's real simple. Got a headache? That's a problem. Take aspirin. That's the prescription. You got trouble with your own messiahship? That's a problem. Take the spiritual discipline of service. That's the antidote. We've been talking a lot about spiritual disciplines, spiritual practices. There are 18 or 19 of them. We've, in our little series, only selected 3 or 4 or 5 to kind of give us a flavor. And one thing that Glenn said, I think just struck us all, was the purpose of spiritual practices is not for others, nor is it for God. It's just for us. Well, you know, that's a hyperbole. Because you know that, for example, with the practical spiritual practice of service, other folks are going to get touched, helped. God's going to get blessed. But the bottom line of these things is, so am I. And there's nothing wrong with that. The spiritual practice of service is what God has designed and laid out before us to release those debilitating weights of empty glory and selfish ambition, and so we don't have to be Messiah anymore. Because by very definition, when I choose to humbly move into serving another, I am doing 2 things. I'm releasing myself into the freedom and joy of walking in the kingdom. At the same time, I am knocking down again this great desire to be in charge of everything, which I'm telling you, and you know, it gets really, really tiring. For example, the antidote there is back in Philippians chapter 2. If you look back with me, I'll put it up here on the screen as well. Verse number 5. Jesus is the model. Your attitude, there's two things here. Your attitude ought to be the same as that of Christ Jesus, who, being in very nature God, and in Greek it really could be translated more fully. They've left it this way for a reason, precisely because he was God. Not while he was God, but precisely because he was God. This is God's attitude. He empties himself and makes himself nothing and takes upon himself the form of a servant. Now, there's two things here. Want to be free from your messiahship? Want to stop being Messiah of your little world? Have the heart of Christ. What's his heart? It's the heart of a servant. I am among you, he said, as one who serves. His whole life was a spiritual practice of service. And he did something about it. There's an action here. So Julie and Bronwyn are out of town. Bree's about 10. I say to Bree, well, we got the whole weekend together. I know. Let's go shoot off model rockets. Because when I was a boy, I used to build model rockets, and you'll really enjoy this. So we went down to Michael's, and we bought all the stuff to make model rockets. And I remember sharing with the cashier the exciting time we were going to have together. Brianna and I, she kind of rolled her eyes at me. I didn't understand then why she did it, but now I do. So we go and we build rockets all evening, and the next morning we go out to the field, we shoot them off. About the second shot, the rocket busts. We're all through with that. Boy, that was fun. Bree says, Daddy, do you think maybe we could play dolls now? Now, what might service look like? Might it look like, instead of trying to suck her into my world, I'm willing to get on my knees and enter into her world? Could that be true? Who is it that you're continually trying to draw into your world, see, that you really ought to stop trying to make fit into your world so you can have a relationship, but instead you get on your knees and you go enter into their world? Who is it? Is it your children who are hollering at you? Daddy, Daddy, come on, let's go do my thing. No, child, let's go do your thing. See the difference? Is it your wife who's trying to get your attention? Go shopping with her. See, this is sometimes just the work of the mundane. That's why Jesus picks up a little child and he says to everybody around, this is your place of service. See this little child? We want some big giant thing to do. And just serve the little child. Take care of the little child. Buy him ice cream. Take him to the amusement park. Get him some toys. You serve the little child. And after a while, you just start serving, and before you know it, the me, my, Messiah world begins to dissipate, and I begin to get my life into others, and all of a sudden we're walking in the kingdom. I was speaking at a conference this week about relational preaching. There were about 30 guys, and one of them was really rather overweight. And you know, unfortunately in our society, there's still a stigma about that, and there's all kinds of issues I won't go into. I know in his case, it was obvious his metabolism and thyroid, probably among some other things, was all messed up. And he tried everything in the world, I'm sure, but still was rather large, and nobody was talking to him. And I didn't want to talk to him either, because I want to talk to these other guys over here, exciting. He's sitting there all by himself. I said, okay, that's the end of that stuff. I'll spend the next 2 days just sitting around there with him. Why? He was alone. And, you know, we do that sometimes. We go to a Bible study group, and we want to spend all of our time with energizing people, you know. But have you noticed in most groups, there's the ones at this level, and everybody wants to be with them. There's some at the back row kind of sitting by themselves. And what would it be like? See, wanting to be in my own little world and enhance it, I want to spend time with all the other folks, see, the exciting ones, the thrilling ones. What would it be like, though, instead, if I were to get on my knees and say, you know, I'm going to come back here and spend some time with the people nobody's talking to? And I tell you what, right there on our knees, we will enter into the kingdom. The spiritual practice of service. Now, I want to illustrate this in Matthew 5, in the middle of the Sermon on the Mount, verse 40, 41. In the Sermon on the Mount, he's taught us a lot about this. I hope you've been here a year or two ago when he kind of moved us through the Sermon on the Mount. Because then we begin to look at things from a servant's perspective. All right? And Jesus says, Matthew chapter 5, if somebody asks you to go 1 mile, go with him 2 miles. Now that was relevant in those days because that's what was happening in their society. Remember, it was an occupied society. The Roman soldiers were there to collect taxes and to keep order. And the people hated them being there. But think about the poor soldier. It's awful to be an occupying soldier in a foreign land where people hate you. The Jews said, get them, destroy them, said the folks in the Jewish nation there. Get back at those guys every chance you get. Hit them in the back. Of course, Jesus says, don't fight back. Turn the other cheek. Well, I don't want to turn the other cheek to that guy. Look what he did. No, love your enemies. He's working here with the heart of a servant. And the Roman law said, that at any time a Roman soldier could conscript any Jewish person to carry his pack for 1 mile. Can't go 2, but you can go 1. So here Jesus is saying, if anybody asks you to go 1 mile with him, ooh, all little ears pick up. I'm telling you to go with him 2. Huh? We hate those guys. We go with him 2 miles. Go with him 1 mile, he's got the spear in your back. You can't turn around, that's the law. And then go a 2nd mile and find freedom. You know, most of us go through life, when we're in charge of our own little kingdom, being my own little Messiah, we want to know, where's the boundary marker? We spend a whole lot of time figuring out, okay, where's the boundary marker? What do I have to do? Where can I quit? When have I done enough? And we spend an inordinate amount of time trying to figure out where those mileposts are. And so the next day, this Roman soldier says to this Jewish guy who'd heard the Sermon on the Mount the day before, pick up my pack. Jewish guy carries that pack. They go for 1 mile. They come to the end of the mile. The soldier says, okay, gone 1 mile. You can put it down. Law said you had to go 1 mile. You did it. You're free. And instead, this day, this Jewish man looked up and says, you know what, if you don't mind, I think I'll just carry it another mile. Huh? Boy, that'll get the attention of the world. Why? As he picks up the pack, the soldier thinks, I've not seen a man like this in all of Israel. Well, here's a guy living in the kingdom. So you're not free when you got to do the 1st mile. You only get free on the 2nd mile. The 2nd mile becomes the mile of love. Go with him 1 mile. You have to. And pick up the pack and go another. And as you and I are on that 2nd mile, we are now entering into the spiritual practice of service. We don't have to do this. But as we enter into this 2nd mile, we can quit anytime we want to. And now we're finding what real freedom is all about. Life in the kingdom. I had a mentor when I was growing up. His name was Dr. L. Taylor Daniel. He was old enough to be my grandfather. I met him on several occasions. Mostly one summer I knew where he was preaching, and I went to hear him preach a lot, learned a lot. And he was telling this story once about his older brother, Calvin. Dr. Daniel lived back in southern Mississippi on a farm. And he told one day his brother was plowing with one of those old Georgia draft plows, had 1 row, 1 furrow, and 1 mule. And Calvin's out there plowing, and after lunch, Dad comes out and says, now, son, I want you to not quit. I got to go into town. I got to buy some stuff. I'm coming back. I put a stake in the ground over there. I want you to plow till you get to that stake. And don't quit. Don't run out on me. When you get to that stake, you can quit. But don't you quit before that. When you get there, you're free to go. Well, Calvin was kind of angry at his dad, the way he was treated, the way his dad spoke to him, and gritted his teeth, kept on plowing there. Dad left. Went through the heat of the afternoon, and then the sun started getting low, and the air began to cool, and he and that mule were kind of in a rhythm, and all of a sudden Calvin kind of started singing, was enjoying himself. Plowed right by that stake. An hour or two later, Dad comes back from town. Where's the stake? Couldn't find the stake. Yeah, there it was. Look back there, way back there. Back in the plowed ground, way back there was that stake. Dad looked at him. Calvin, what were you thinking? I told you could quit. There was the post. Could have walked away. Well, Dad, I don't know. Air started getting cool. Sun was going down. Mule and I kind of in rhythm. Got to singing. You know, Dad, I plowed the first mile. I plowed to that stake because you made me. I kept on plowing because I just wanted to. He found his freedom on the second mile. Dad says to Calvin, you know, Calvin, you keep that attitude, you'll do real well in life. I don't want to be my own Messiah. Jesus, he didn't. Did he play Superman? He's our model. No. Those were real nails. All right? It was a real cross. He didn't put his hands on his hips and defy him. He submitted himself. Now here's what's really intriguing. Every person who's ever lived has tried to be at one time or other their own Messiah. Jesus didn't come in grandiosity. That's why they didn't notice him. And the only one who didn't make a big deal out of it was the one who really was. Well, let's transition here just a bit. I want you to close your eyes. I want you to just reflect. Is there somebody in your week, this week, you're going to meet who's lonely and needs some care? There's somebody clamoring for your attention. There's somebody right now that you know, maybe one of your children or your spouse, who's been trying to get your attention. And here's what I want you to do. I want you to burst out of your own little messiahship world, and I want you to put a face on that person. And before this week is out, I want you to go to that person and listen to what they've been trying to tell you. Honor them by caring enough to stop off by the side of the road and just listen. Think of an act of kindness you can do this week. Make it mundane. Make up your bed for your mother. Clean the dishes for your spouse. Write a card or an email of appreciation. Just one thing this week. A practical service. And then next week, stop and realize what it's done to your heart. Father, I pray that you'd release us through this spiritual practicality and trying to be our own Messiah, so that not only can we walk in the kingdom and enjoy every moment of it, but Lord, at the same time, we can be a blessing to your heart and those around us. I thank you.